Like many of you in the corporate world, I've had my fair share of late nights at the office. It's almost a rite of passage, a sign of dedication, perhaps, or just poor time management. My office is situated in the heart of the central business district, but the building itself is old, with the kind of character that some might call charming, and others might find unsettling. The walls creak more than they should, and the lights occasionally flicker even when no one's touched the switch. But I never paid much attention to these quirks. That is, until one night when everything changed. It was a Thursday, and I remember feeling the weight of the week's workload crushing down on me. My colleague, the one who usually burned the midnight oil with me, was on vacation. I was left to shoulder the responsibility of his tasks along with my own. By 6 p.m., most of my coworkers had packed up and left. By 9 p.m., I was alone. At first, the solitude was almost peaceful. The hum of the air conditioning, the distant sound of traffic outside, these were the only noises that kept me company. The office, usually buzzing with the energy of people, felt oddly calm. I was making good progress, lost in the world of spreadsheets and emails. But as the hours ticked by, something shifted. The air grew colder, heavier, like a dense fog had settled into the room. A sense of unease began to gnaw at the edges of my consciousness, a creeping dread that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. By 10 p.m., the atmosphere in the office had become stifling. The once comforting hum of the air conditioning now felt oppressive, almost malevolent. I could feel something watching me, but every time I turned around, there was nothing there, just the dimly lit rows of empty desks. The fluorescent lights above me flickered, casting the office in an eerie, pulsating glow. I shook off the feeling, attributing it to overwork and fatigue. After all, I'd been staring at a screen for hours. My eyes were probably just tired. But the sensation didn't go away. It grew stronger, more oppressive, as if the shadows themselves were inching closer, closing in on me. And then I heard it, a soft chuckle, the kind you might hear from a child hiding behind a corner playing a game. I froze, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. The sound was so out of place that I almost laughed at myself. This was just my mind playing tricks on me, right? But then it happened again, and this time it wasn't just one chuckle. It was several, overlapping and echoing through the empty office, each one slightly off, as if they were coming from somewhere deep within the walls. My heart pounded in my chest, a cold sweat breaking out on my forehead. I didn't want to believe what I was hearing. The logical part of my brain kept insisting that it was just the building settling, or maybe something from outside. But deep down, I knew better. I started to pack up my things, deciding that I'd done enough for one night. But as I was about to shut down my computer, something caught my eye. In the far corner of the office, just at the edge of my peripheral vision, I saw them, 5 children standing in the shadows, staring at me. They looked like they were from another time, their clothes old-fashioned, their hair neatly combed. But there was something terribly wrong with their faces. Their eyes were dark, hollow pits, and their skin was pale, almost translucent, like they hadn't seen sunlight in years. I could see their mouths moving, whispering to each other, but I couldn't make out what they were saying. It was as if their voices were trapped in some otherworldly frequency, just beyond the range of normal hearing. I wanted to scream, to run, but my body refused to move. All I could do was sit there, staring at my monitor, pretending I hadn't seen them. I remembered an old piece of advice I'd once heard: never acknowledge their presence. If you do, they'll know you can see them, and they'll never leave you alone. So I kept my eyes fixed on the screen, hoping they would disappear if I just ignored them. But they didn't. Instead, one of them stepped forward, a little girl with pigtails and a torn dress. "Hey, mister, can you see us?" she asked in a sing-song voice that sent shivers down my spine. I didn't respond. I didn't even blink. "If you don't acknowledge us," she continued, "we'll do things to you." Her voice was sweet, almost innocent, but the threat in her words was unmistakable. The others began to giggle, a low, menacing sound that reverberated through the air, making my skin crawl. The little girl started walking towards me, her movements slow and deliberate, her eyes never leaving mine. I felt a cold sweat break out on my forehead. My heart was pounding so loudly I was sure they could hear it. The girl was only a few feet away now. I could see her face more clearly, and it was twisted into an unsettling smile, her teeth sharp and gleaming in the dim light. Her skin was a sickly shade of gray, and her eyes, they were like black voids, endless and empty, as if they could swallow my soul whole. Just as I thought I couldn't take it anymore, the door to the office creaked open. I flinched, expecting the worst, but instead, a security guard stepped inside. He was an older man, someone I'd seen around the building before but had never spoken to. The moment he entered, the children vanished, disappearing into thin air as if they had never been there at all. "Hey, what time will you be working till?" the guard asked, his voice gruff but not unkind. I stared at him for a moment, still in shock, before managing to stammer out, "I'm leaving now." I didn't wait for his response. I grabbed my bag and bolted out of the office, not even bothering to shut down my computer. The guard watched me go, a puzzled expression on his face, but I didn't care. I just needed to get out of there. As I stepped out into the cool night air, I felt a wave of relief wash over me. The city was quiet, the streets almost empty, bathed in the eerie glow of streetlights. I managed to catch the last bus home, the ride uneventful, and I began to convince myself that what had happened was just a product of my overactive imagination. Maybe I was just tired, maybe I had fallen asleep at my desk and dreamed the whole thing. But deep down, I knew that wasn't true. When I finally arrived at my apartment complex, it was past midnight. I lived on one of the higher floors, so I headed straight for the elevator. I just wanted to get home, lock the door behind me, and pretend none of this had ever happened. As the elevator doors closed and the car began its ascent, I caught a glimpse of something in the mirrored walls. At first, I thought it was just a trick of the light, a shadow cast by the dim fluorescent bulbs. But then I saw it clearly and my blood ran cold. One of the children was there, clinging to my back as if it was piggybacking on me. It was the little girl with pigtails. Her face was inches away from mine, her breath cold against my neck. She smiled at me through the reflection, her dark eyes gleaming with malicious intent. Her fingers, icy and skeletal, wrapped around my shoulders, digging into my flesh with an unnatural strength. I didn't dare move. My apartment was only a few floors away, but I knew I couldn't go home like this. If I did, I'd be inviting her in, letting her haunt my space forever. I had to get her off me, but I didn't know how. The elevator dinged and the doors slid open. I stepped out, trying to act as if nothing was wrong, but my mind was racing. Where could I go? What could I do? The lobby was empty, the only sound the faint hum of the elevator as it continued its journey upwards. I couldn't go back into my apartment. I knew that much. But I couldn't stay here either, not with her still attached to me. I needed to think, to figure out a way to get rid of her. Suddenly, I remembered something I had read a long time ago, about spirits and the ways to repel them. It wasn't something as simple as running water, which might not even work on such persistent entities. No, what I needed was a place filled with light and energy, a place where no spirit could sustain itself for long. There was an old temple a few blocks away from my apartment. I had passed by it many times, but I had never gone inside. It was said to be a place of great spiritual power, a sanctuary where no evil could enter. It was a long shot, but it was the only thing I could think of. I left the building, walking quickly but trying not to draw attention to myself. The streets were quiet, almost unnaturally so, as if the city itself was holding its breath. I could feel her on my back, her weight growing heavier with each step I took. It was as if she was trying to pull me down, to drag me into the darkness with her. The temple wasn't far, but it felt like the longest walk of my life. Every shadow seemed to stretch towards me, every sound made me jump. I was terrified that she would realize where I was going and do something to stop me. But eventually, I made it. The temple was a small, unassuming building, tucked away between two taller, more modern structures. But as I approached, I felt a sense of calm wash over me, as if the very air around the temple was charged with positive energy. I hesitated at the entrance, unsure of what to do. The doors were open, the warm glow of candlelight spilling out into the night. I stepped inside and immediately the weight on my back lifted. There was an old priest inside, tending to the altar. He looked up as I entered, his eyes narrowing as if he could see the fear written on my face. Without a word, he motioned for me to approach. I did as he asked, walking slowly towards the altar. The air inside the temple was warm, filled with the scent of incense and the sound of soft chanting in the background. The priest began to chant, his voice low and steady, and I felt a strange sensation, like a cold breeze passing over me. The little girl was gone. I didn't need to look in the mirror to know it. I could feel it. Her presence had been burned away by the light and energy of the temple. The priest didn't ask any questions and I didn't offer any explanations. When the ritual was over, I thanked him and left, feeling lighter than I had in hours. I didn't go straight home after that. I walked around the city for a while, letting the events of the night sink in. By the time I returned to my apartment, the first light of dawn was beginning to peek over the horizon. I didn't sleep much that night, but when I did, it was without nightmares. The little girl didn't follow me home and I haven't seen her, or any of the other children, since. But that night changed me. I've never worked late at the office again and I never will. Deadlines can wait, but some things are more important than work, like keeping your sanity intact. And if you ever find yourself alone in an old office building late at night, feeling that same chill I did, do yourself a favor. Pack up and leave. Don't risk it. Because once they know you can see them, they'll never leave you alone. And whatever you do, don't let them follow you home. If you enjoyed this story, hit like and subscribe to Horror Confessions to get notified about our latest chilling tales. Thanks for watching.